So yeah, you want to try to visualize. Someone makes an argument, and someone makes a counter argument. If you want to get really crazy, and you probably don't want to do this yet, but like if it could boil down to the individual facts, like imagine that if you could type out like 107 different facts I reference in this thing, and then I could have somewhere there's some links to the sources I have for those facts, and then if those get disproven at a later date, you can take those down, right? And they're like, oh, we only have this many facts actually turned out to be true, and on the basis of those, we make this argument. That argument required this. That, okay, when that moves onto this side, and that has the general trustworthiness of various sources, and it gets complicated. It gets complicated. But things like that. Talk about how people respond to each other, and people changing their own minds. There should be a thing this should be able to link, right? So something you realize we have a fair amount of data here, even without actually holding any video files at all. Heck, you don't necessarily need to hold text files. They could all be in blogs if you felt like it. I think I'll hold text files local though. But suddenly we've got this data where you can post them and say, this is what I think about this in June, right? And then someone changes your mind, and then you like click this little link by that video and says, okay, I think this applies to my previous video, and I'm going to make a video about that application and say that this thing here has convinced me to abandon my previous position that I had up here. I had this video here explaining that. your new position. So you could get like anybody's current position on any issue that they so far have a position about. So we start launching a platform for discussion. Very interesting. Now we have some real-world type things to work out, such as what domain name we're going to use and who's going to buy that domain name, and how much work are you willing to do? Because we don't want everything to just put it all on your back and make you deal with all our problems. But Mark, you seem to be the one, stepping up with some ideas, and you asked how we think it ought to be. And these are my basic ideas. I think that's how it'll be. I think somebody around here, possibly you, possibly anybody, should make a graphic of how it would physically look and how it would be organized. And then we could start moving around. Well, I think this should be here, and different color schemes even now. Color schemes matters. I'm interested in how we can foster discussion, intelligence, and stuff far beyond than we've seen in forums, right? Because we can have forums. I'm sure you might as well put those up just to have them there. But I want something much more interesting. Something that can collect practically any data at all. And I like that idea, that it could be a system. Basically, it's entirely metadata that you'll be holding almost, right? A system of linking data to data. Alright? So just as in the basic sense, we have, a video, and that's a link to some website where the video is hosted. And then the author's text about that video, just explaining what it is. And there's a certain type of link there, so that means we put this over here. And then like everybody's comments on that, and this would be brief comments anyway, we go to a certain level, and then the people's comments and comment on their comments, of course, and people can make videos responding to your video, or not even just responding, it could just be generally on the same subject. And there's some more metadata about how this one goes to that, right? And then I go on the website and I think, wow, this person's video here is very interesting. I give it a little thumbs up or whatever, right? And that's inputting more data into the system, which says, somebody thinks this video is pretty interesting, and so that kind of bumps up its rating or something. And then you could eventually start rating each other and rating the ratings and rating, and complex things like that. But it could be any data at all. It could be videos, it could be text, it could be images, it could be links to various websites. So like I'm saying, if I make a post, that that uses some certain source to make a point, not only would our system, our theoretical system, look at the post itself, but it would recognize, like you would highlight this thing or put it in a separate box or something somehow. The poster would recognize, we'll put this up as a source. So now you have the thing and you have his sources, right? And then you could check the source and see if you like that, And if someone cites a certain thing, which turns out to be wrong most of the time, then people could also rate that source and say that such and such magazine, let's say, is not trustworthy, right? And so if someone, like half of his facts, you can see there'll be a little list of the facts, because either he or the community at large would make a list of the points that he argued, and the evidence that he's coming with, and you have to distinguish between like evidence and logical conclusion coming from that. But then you could rate even that and say, look, he made 3 different points here, and 2 of them are based entirely on evidence A and B, and A and B both came from magazine X, and according to this poll over here, magazine X is not trustworthy, which throws doubt onto this entire thing. But then somebody else comes along using magazine Y. Well, let's say it's a magazine. Let's say it's, using documentary Y, which let's say is trustworthy, and perhaps he makes a similar point, and then somehow the system, using social interaction, I'm sure, would work out that, hey, this guy made this point on the basis of this evidence, and that evidence turns out to be wrong. However, a similar point can be proven from this other evidence that this other guy put up, and therefore maybe the point is valuable. I'm thinking big and long term, and that's always what I do. But so imagine eventually just being able to trace every logic line, in every argument, and seeing where things break down on both sides of every issue. I'd imagine on both sides of every issue, you're gonna find certain places where that doesn't quite make sense. Okay, so you can't do that, so that doesn't work. But okay, maybe if we, because of this other thing, then we have something kind of similar, and then we start building a compromise. The computer really assists in our discussions and debates and such. Okay, I know I'm thinking big here. I don't know how much you or anybody else, other programmer types out here. I myself know a little bit about programming, but can't say I really know. Not yet, anyway. But to anyone out there, do you know what I'm kind of saying? Can we start working on this? At the very basic level, can we just make something that's a lot like Ning? And then we start putting our own stuff on top of that. Encouraging discussion, making discussions better, and soon enough we've got something so useful to say that people can't help but flock to Enation. Or so I would hope. Thanks for watching. See you later.